Alright guys, as always, we are going to go to the Patreon for our videos. I want to give a massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon. They're the ones who make the show run. And we are going to do our second straight video suggestion from Point God. If you don't know who Point God is, he's extremely active in the Discord chat. And on top of that, he actually creates the thumbnails for our videos. Owe him a massive thank you. And we are going to do his Kenyan Drake video. And I thought that it would actually be more interesting if we do Kenyan Drake versus Chase Edmunds, because I think one of these running backs has league-winning potential at the price that you can purchase them at. But let's get into the video.
That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Alright guys, let's talk about Kenyan Drake versus Chase Edmunds and which one I think is a dynasty buy and which one I think is a dynasty sell. So first off, let's start off with the profiles of each running back. So Kenyan Drake is 26 years old. He's a great athlete, at least if we still believe in his combine testing from way back when he was coming into the NFL. He's 6'1", 210 pounds. Now, this is where it's concerning for me. If we look at his BMI, we know that this is in the 7th percentile out of all NFL running backs. So this is something that actually surprised me. I had never heard about Kenyan Drake being a smaller running back. I had never seen Kenyan Drake look small on the football field. But we do know that Kenyan Drake has a history of being a very efficient running back, but coaches do not want to give him a full workload, and this may explain it, but we'll address that later on in the video. Right now, let's talk about what Kenyan Drake's price is both in redraft leagues and in dynasty leagues right now. So Kenyan Drake is actually going at the end of the first round of high-stakes redraft leagues or at the beginning of the second round. And I know this may surprise a lot of people if you are not necessarily in high-stakes redraft leagues right now or following them closely. But guys, people are extremely excited about Kenyan Drake, and for a good reason. Later on in the video, we'll talk about how fantastic he was in this Arizona Cardinals passing offense and being the full-time workhorse running back. But in Dynasty, it's a little bit of a different story just because Kenyan Drake is 26 years old, and that's actually a lot older than I think most people would say. If you took a poll out of everyone who played Dynasty and said, hey, how old is Kenyan Drake? 24, 25, 26, 27? I bet you most people would tell you he was 24, 25 years old. Just because Kenyan Drake, yes, he's been discussed in Dynasty circles for quite a while now, but not necessarily in the same conversation we're having him with now, where we're talking about him potentially being your RB1 for your fantasy team and you being fine with that and being able to win games with that. But let's talk about how Kenyan Drake got here in Dynasty and in Redraft. So we know halfway through the season last year, the Miami Dolphins were just in full-on tank mode, really could not win a single game, and they went out and they were just selling all their assets. They went and sold Mika Fitzpatrick for a first from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then they went out and traded Kenyan Drake for a conditional 5th-round pick from the Arizona Cardinals. And I'm not going to lie, this may be something that is notable for later on in the video whenever I start talking about Kenyan Drake's negatives. Maybe I just have a bias against him because he burned me. After the Cardinals went out and traded a 5th-round pick for Kenyan Drake, I went out there and used the small bump in dynasty value and sold him pretty much everywhere at a price that's hilariously low compared to where he's going now. So let's keep that in mind. I may have a bias. I'm going to try to push it aside and going to try to look at this objectively, but I want to be in the clear here. But in 2020, we see the Arizona Cardinals go out there and place the transition tag on Kenyan Drake. This is a great sign for Kenyan Drake's both redraft and dynasty value because a lot of people were kind of worried that they were going to bring him in for this season and not necessarily bring him on the team in 2020 and beyond. But the transition tag is affordable for the team and it's a good price for Kenyan Drake. If he comes out and he really performs, I could see them similarly giving him a type deal to the transition tag going into 2021, but we have to keep in mind Kenyan Drake is a 26-year-old running back at this point, and if you look at the list of running backs in Dynasty, I promise you Kenyan Drake's a lot older than guys you would never expect. But let's look at his entire career up to this point, And keep in mind, it's going to be a little bit misleading just because he was in that Miami Dolphins system. And we know that that Miami Dolphins system does not produce either fantasy running backs, fantasy wide receivers, just nothing really with Adam Gase was going on there. And that's the majority of the time that Kenyan Drake was in Miami. So his rush attempts per game started off his rookie season with only 2.1 rush attempts per game. Keep in mind, Kenyan Drake was a very low draft pick coming into the NFL, so it's going to take him a little bit longer to get that opportunity just because he's not going to be slotted into a starting role right away. But every single year that he's with Miami, he proves to be efficient, and we see this with his attempts starting to go up as the team begins to trust him more and more. His second year, he averages 8.3 rush attempts per game. Third year, 7.5. Fourth year, 12.1. And we actually see him in Arizona while he's the starting running back, average 15.4 rush attempts per game, which is near the top of the league, especially when you consider what he is able to do in the passing game. If we also look at what he was able to do in Arizona in the passing game, he averaged about 4.5 targets a game and almost averaged about 22 receiving yards a game. So this is significant in that I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, I mean, whatever, it's 20 receiving yards a game, it's about 2 or 3 receptions a game. I'm not going to really go out there and pay the premium for it. But you have to keep in mind, say he gets 3 receptions and 22 receiving yards a game, that's almost a rushing touchdown. He's adding pretty much a touchdown through his receiving work every single game. He averaged 80 yards rushing in Arizona in 2019. So this is a running back that averaged over 100 all-purpose yards, almost 5 targets, and over 15 rushes with his job secured in Arizona in 2019. And if we look at what this accumulated to, just mainly due to how effective he was in both the rushing and receiving game, I cannot stress that enough, that he's not one-dimensional. He can do both. In weeks 9 through 16, Kenyan Drake was actually the RB4 in terms of points per game. So this is right in line with where he's going in redraft leagues at the moment, but I'm going to argue that I think this is mainly situational driven. If we look at this Arizona Cardinals offense, yes, they do not have the best offensive line, but the scheme that Cliff Kingsbury has drawn up with them sending so many wide receivers out wide, with them getting the ball off so early, it's extremely run favorable. If we look at across the entire NFL in terms of teams with successful rush attempts, the Arizona Cardinals are at the top of that list throughout 2019, not only when they get Kenyan Drake. But nonetheless, let's go to Kenyan Drake's backup running back and let's see what's going on with Chase Edmunds. So, of course, with Chase Edmunds, we're going to start by talking about what kind of running back he is. And that's pretty much an all-around running back. He's about 5 pounds less than Kenyan Drake, but you have to keep in mind that he's about 3 inches shorter. So while Kenyan Drake has a little bit of weight on him, if you look at height to weight ratio, Chase Edmunds has the much better BMI and is in the 52nd percentile. I think this is much better to look at than overall weight, just because you see how the running back is built. But Chase Edmunds 3 years ago was a 4th round pick by the Arizona Cardinals. He's 24 years old, and he has about average athleticism, nothing that's going to blow you away. And if we look at his career up to this point, I will say that if we try to look at his touches per game, which is what I like to do to see how a running back is going to profile and see how a running back is going to be used in an offense, I think it's pretty much useless. Just because at least in 2019, Chase Edmunds was the full-on backup behind David Johnson for the first half of the season and behind Kenyan Drake for the second half of the season, and I think we can expect the same thing going into 2020. But with Chase Edmunds, with the price you are going to have to pay, with him being drafted around running back 50, let's look at what he can do if he gets the opportunity in 2020, whether that's due to Kenyan Drake either being worse than we expected, somehow regressing, or Kenyan Drake and his slight frame not being able to hold up to a full workload and actually getting injured in 2020. But in 2019, if we look at Chase Edmunds' efficiency stats, now keep in mind, these are not perfect just because of the way that the situation really dictates things, but he had 5.1 yards per rush and about 8.8 yards per reception. Now, both of these marks are higher than both Kenyan Drake and David Johnson in 2019. Now, of course, if we see Chase Edmunds get a full-on workload, we cannot expect these efficiency marks to hold up. They're going to regress just a little bit because Chase Edmunds is going to be a little bit more fatigued on every carry and is going to average out. Now let's look at one game in particular, because David Johnson got injured, and then there was a week before Kenyan Drake was traded to Arizona where Chase Edmunds was actually the full-time workhorse running back, and let's see what he was able to do that week. Now, if we look at his carries mark, in 1 week, he carried the ball 27 times for 126 yards, and he was also used in the passing game a little bit, getting 2 receptions. So this is just a slight frame into what I believe that Chase Edmunds may be able to provide if for some reason we get to see him in action in Arizona in 2020. So with him being drafted around running back 50, I believe that Chase Edmunds is one of these guys that I go out here and I try to tell y'all, hey, we need guys with ceilings. We're not going to go out here and we're not going to try to draft a Cole Beasley. We want to go out there and we want to draft a guy that's going to be able to win your league. And if anything happens to Kenyan Drake, getting Chase Edmunds around the running back 50 is going to win you your Dynasty League. I can guarantee that. Any team with Chase Edmunds will have an astronomical win rate compared to the rest of the field. So to summarize, let's call Kenyan Drake honestly a sell in Dynasty, just because in redraft he may return value on his price, but at the same time, even if he does return value on that low-end RB1 price in redraft, in Dynasty, I guarantee you we will actually see his value decrease just because, I mean, he's already 26 years old. So going into next year, he will be 27. And we just saw Derrick Henry come off and win the league's rushing title. And yet, due to him not having a long-term contract, he's not even a first or second round Dynasty startup pick. So Kenyan Drake, I'm calling a sell at this point. I think in Dynasty, he is priced at his ceiling. And yes, he may be able to return you fantasy points for 2020 and 2021. But I would much rather go down and pick up Chase Edmunds for free rather than pay for the immediate situation in Kenyan Drake. But that's all I got for y'all. Really hope y'all enjoyed the video. Really hope y'all go out there and try to buy Chase Edmunds. He's a player that I'm going to admit I don't have enough of in Dynasty, and I'm going to go out there and send some trade offers for, and hopefully I can pick him up. But thanks, guys. Really hope y'all enjoyed the video. Have a great day.